Hey guys, it's Brian. We're back in the garage with the Frostbite JL, and today we're going to be putting on some skid plates. Let's go ahead and take a look. Alright guys, so we went with some skid plates from Rusty's. This is going to be the motor skid plate for the 3.6. They also make it for the 2.0 if you guys have the turbo. So this one's going to be pretty cool. It is going to come raw, so we are going to need to paint it, but I do really like this design. It actually comes up, tucks real close to the exhaust, and then has a little hoop support that goes right around the exhaust instead of going underneath it. So you do gain a little bit of clearance. It doesn't weigh too much, it's right around 25 pounds, and it should give us lots of protection for that upcoming Rubicon trip. So let's go ahead and get this unboxed and we'll take a look at it. Alright guys, so it looks like it does come painted. So on their website it does say it ships bare, but I lucked out. This is actually powder coated already, so this is awesome. So it's ready to go on the Jeep. Let me go ahead and get it out. We'll take a good look at what you get in the box, and then we'll go ahead and get it installed. Alright guys, we finally got the skid plate and all the parts out of the box. Like I said, they do package them great. Rusty's does a really good job with that. They did great on my sliders as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at this skid plate for the motor. So this design's pretty cool. So instead of going down and underneath the exhaust like some of the designs do, this one actually wraps around it, and you're going to use these brackets. So they'll go like this and the exhaust will tuck in nice in here. Some of those other ones, they do come down a little bit and you lose some ground clearance here. So this is a good design. I do like these brackets. I do like that they went ahead and put all the hardware in the appropriate locations, so there's no guessing where the hardware goes. Alright guys, so we went with the system because it is modular. I do want to have the ability to go ahead and add the transfer case one and the gas tank one later if I do so choose. I didn't want to add all that weight to the Jeep, so I think this is just a good piece. It'll protect the motor, especially on this upcoming Rubicon trip we're going to do, guys. So I do have this piece from Rusty's we're going to install. I also have some of their at the frame side skids that we're going to install. I also have Evo's lower mounts for the shocks and lower control arms for the rear as well. So we're going to go ahead and add those. Give us plenty of protection, that way we're not smashing brackets and stuff on the trail. So I'm going to get this installed. Like I said, all the bolts are already in place, so there's no guesswork there. I do also like that their kit, instead of reusing the factory hardware at the cross member here, it does include these nice ramped up washers that are going to hide the head of the nut deep down inside there. So the nice thing about this is rocks are going to slide up and over and you're not going to screw up the bolt head. So that's kind of a cool touch. Not all kits have that. So this is pretty easy. We basically have to add the little hoops for the exhaust, and then we've got these two brackets that are going to go up and attach to the motor mounts. Alright guys, I do want to go ahead and show you also where you drain the oil. It does come with a nice plate. Some kits will just have a cutout, like an oval cutout. This one actually comes with a cover, so this does protect everything, and should slide over rocks better if you do have a rock way up in there. It's pretty easy. It is these little hex heads or Allen heads. It's just 3 of them and you pull it off. We'll see. I'm going to put some anti-seize on those because I don't want those getting corroded. And I'll probably take it off before I go into the dealership to have them do oil changes, just so they don't have to mess with it. But it is nice to have that added protection, and rocks will slide over better than a hole. So pretty cool kit. I'm excited to get it on the Jeep and get that added protection. Alright, let's get it installed. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get our skid plate installed. Let's go over the tools you're going to need for it. So if you come down here and look, these little hoops that go around the exhaust, these are going to be 1/2 inch bolts on both sides here. And then when you come up here, the arms that go up to the motor mounts, these are going to be 9/16. So you'll need those tools to get this installed. But first thing we're going to do is get the old factory cross member out of the way for the transmission, and then we're going to lower down the transfer case as well, just so we can slide our plate in there. That one's going to be an 18mm and then 213s down by the gas tank. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright guys, so this is going to be the transmission cross member that we need to remove. So this is going to be those 18mm bolts right there. And then we also need to remove the transfer case skid part, just so we can get to these 2 bolts, so we can put in our new skid. So those are going to be 18mm as well. And then those 2 13mm are going to be right there for you. So let's go ahead and we'll get that removed and we'll get that new skid plate installed. All right, guys, so now that I went ahead and loosened up those 18 millimeters and the 213s down by the gas tank, this is loose enough now that we can go ahead and slide in our new plate. So let's go ahead and grab it. All right, guys, so now that we have everything off and loose down underneath there, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna grab our new 19 millimeter bolts. These ones are pretty cool. They do come with the ramp here, so you don't screw up your bolt head there. So those will sit right in there. They're flush, so when you roll over rocks, you don't screw these up, so you can get them out later. I'm also going to throw a little anti-seize on there. I do want to remove it at some point. So let's go ahead and we'll get these installed real quick. I'm going to put the skid plate underneath there. We'll tighten them up, and then we can hang our arms. Alright guys, so now that we went ahead and snugged those up with the 19 millimeter, you do want to make sure you slide the new skid plate underneath the old factory one on this arm here. That way it's on top here, and we'll sandwich this down here. And then I did use a little jack stand right here to kind of support the front of the skid plate. That made it way easier trying to get these bolts in. Now that it's in here, it's kind of hanging, we can go ahead and attach the arms and tighten them up to the motor mounts. Alright guys, so we're going to do the passenger side first. For this one, it goes up right onto that motor mount there, and then the two bolts go down here. This does go on the inside of the plate. This is going to be those 9/16 bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten those up and show you what it looks like when we're all done, and then we'll move to the driver's side. Alright guys, so one thing to note, that hole that bolt has to go through is pretty tight on my particular Jeep. So I did go ahead and open it up a little with a drill bit, just a tiny bit, so we can get that bolt through. I'm going to touch it up with some paint right now, and then we'll drop that bolt in. Alright, and then over on the driver's side, those two holes up there by the body mount, that's where our arm for the driver's side is going to go. There's a lot more clearance there, so we shouldn't have any issue on that one. Let's go ahead and get everything fitted up, and I'll show you how it looks. Alright guys, and one thing that's nice that Rusty did is they went ahead and put all the hardware where it needed to go. So one thing to note, this bolt that goes on the passenger side arm at the motor mount is actually going to be a 5/8. So it is a little bit bigger bolt. I'm assuming that's because there's only one mounting bolt on the top here on this side, and there's two on the other side. The rest of them are going to be 9/16 on this side and on the other side at both ends. So let's go ahead and we'll get this bolt in. We'll get this side just snugged up a little bit, and we'll do that driver's side. Alright guys, so as far as getting this guy in, I did have to drill that hole open a little bit. It wasn't too big of a deal. I painted it, we were able to get the bolt through. So this is going to be the bigger 5/8 bolt. You do want a deep socket. A regular one's not going to do it. You just want to get it nice and tight there. So now that that's on, let's go ahead and do the driver's side. Alright guys, so on this side, they do provide a shorter bolt and a longer bolt. You do want to go ahead and put that shorter bolt right underneath that motor mount towards the rear of the vehicle. That way you can get that bolt in that clearing there. It is pretty tight, so then that short bolt's pretty nice. So let's go ahead and we'll get this side hung up. Alright guys, this is what it's going to look like all mocked up here. We're going to go ahead and tighten these guys down now, and then we should be all set. Here we go. Alright guys, so I did go ahead and get everything tightened up. I did go ahead and paint mark the bolts that go to the motor mounts, just so we can keep an eye on them, make sure they don't come loose. One thing to note, that shorter bolt doesn't go all the way through the nut. So I did put some blue Loctite on it, and I did paint mark that one specifically so we can keep an eye on that. You could pull those washers out and it would get to the lock nut part of the nut, but I'm just going to run it like that, make sure we don't have any issues down the road. I might change it out if we need to. So these guys are all tightened up, as about as snug as I could get them. Alright guys, so now that we got everything tightened up for the new skid plate, we're going to go ahead and install these little supports that go over the exhaust loop here. So this is going to be your 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. They do have the nuts welded on the back, so you don't have to juggle any of that. We just go ahead and we'll put it up just like so and get it tightened. So they did go ahead and only put half the hardware in on the driver's side one, so you know that goes on the driver's side. So we're gonna go ahead and get the passenger side buttoned up, and then we'll do that other side. Here we go. All right, guys, we went ahead and got the passenger side exhaust loop support buttoned up. Let's go ahead and do the driver's side. Then after that, all that's left to do is go ahead and tighten up our bolts on the factory transfer case skid, and then this install is all done. I'll show you what it looks like. All right, guys, so one thing to note on this driver's side, the support bracket does have welded nuts on the side that goes closest to the front of the Jeep. And then on the rear, it has the welded nuts on the back of the skid plate. So what this does is this puts this inside the skid plate and this one outside. So we'll show you what that looks like. Something like that. Let's go ahead and snug it up and I'll show you. It is pretty close to the exhaust, but I think they had to do this for clearance with the motor. All right, guys, so to go ahead and tighten up this rear bolt, I did go ahead and loosen the bolts, the 19mm bolts, to drop the skid down a little bit to clearance this exhaust. So we'll go ahead and tighten that back up, get this back up where it goes. I kind of want to show you how close it is here. They did engineer it pretty good though, so it looks like there's plenty of clearance with the exhaust. Let me show you. So it does come pretty close to that oil pan, and it just clears the exhaust there. All right, guys, so now that we have everything buttoned up on the new skid plate, let's go ahead and tighten up our transfer case factory skid plate. That's going to be the 3 18mm and then the 2 13mm down by the gas tank. Then we should be all done. We'll come back and take a look what we got and we'll go over it. All right, guys, so one thing to note for the access port for the drain plug for the oil pan is it is going to be a 5/32 Allen. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it off real quick, these 3 little bolts, and I'm going to put some anti-seize on them. That way those don't ever seize up. You know, Allens do have a tendency to strip out, so I want to make sure that never happens. Just something to mention. We'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll wrap up this install. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the Rusty's engine and transmission skid plate install. Went on pretty easy. Only thing we had to do is open up that one hole a little bit to get that arm on there. Other than that, it was super easy. You can do it in about an hour or so in your garage. So I do think it turned out great. We still have plenty of clearance around the exhaust there, so even if we take a hit, it's not going to be rattling on the exhaust. And we do have plenty of protection now for the engine oil pan and for the transmission and those transmission lines. So I think it's a great addition. Only weighs around 25 pounds, so not adding too much weight. All right, guys, go ahead and like and subscribe, follow along. We've got more cool install videos coming. Thanks, guys.